Have you ever loved someone so deeply that their silence felt louder than any argument? That aching, invisible absence. The kind that doesn't make a sound but somehow says everything. Now imagine that silence coming from God, not because He left, but because you did. You didn't mean to wander. You were busy surviving heartbreak, tending to wounds, chasing love, chasing approval, chasing anything that made you feel seen again. And slowly, subtly, the connection with Him faded. You didn't even notice it at first, but now something feels hollow. And it hurts. Because when you're distant from God, your soul knows. And no matter how much noise you pump into your life, relationships, social media, music, even ministry, the silence from heaven makes your soul start to scream. But let's go deeper, because this isn't just about how you feel. It's about why you feel it. Love, in its truest form, is not just emotion. It's not just passion or chemistry. Love is a moral decision, an act of courage that integrates vulnerability, responsibility, and sacrifice. And when we lose touch with the source of love, God Himself, we lose our moral and emotional center. God is love. Not romantic love, not the Hollywood kind, but the fierce, purifying, unwavering kind that chooses you even when you're unrecognizable. And in our search for meaning, we often transfer that divine hunger to people. We ask others to fill the void only God was meant to occupy. We want them to rescue us, to fix our loneliness, to complete our chaos. But when we do that, we distort the nature of love. Love becomes consumption, a pursuit of pleasure, an escape from pain, but real love, isn't about how much someone gives you. It's about how much you're willing to give without losing yourself. It's commitment in the face of chaos. It's discipline in the storm. It's vulnerability with no guarantees. And when you lose connection with the divine source of love, you lose the anchor that helps you carry the burden of human relationships. Suddenly, everything becomes transactional. Every act of affection becomes a negotiation. Every moment of conflict feels like betrayal. Why? Because when we disconnect from God, we no longer love from fullness, we love from emptiness. And empty people break things. They grasp, they panic, they run. Psychologically, this disconnection manifests as anxiety, detachment, and codependency. Philosophically, it signals a rupture between our higher calling and our lived experience. And spiritually, it is a cry from the soul, come back. Because love is not just a feeling, it's a way of becoming. It is through loving, even in the mess, that we are formed. Love teaches us humility. It teaches us how to hold contradictions, to accept someone fully, not because they are perfect, but because you've both chosen to carry the burden of imperfection together. And that's the tension. We want unconditional love, but we struggle to give it. We want God to be patient with our flaws, yet we bristle at the flaws of others. But real love doesn't just tolerate imperfections, it finds beauty in them, because only through shared weakness do we discover the strength of grace. So, when you feel distant from God and your heart aches with a pain you can't name, pause. Don't run to be filled by noise. That scream in your soul, that ache in your chest, it's love calling you back, not to religion, not to perfection, but to presence, because the one you think is silent is actually whispering in the stillness, I never left. I've been waiting for you to listen. There's a quiet tragedy that often goes unnoticed. It's not when someone leaves. It's not even when they break your heart. It's when you give someone the kind of love, raw, unconditional, sacrificial, that only God was meant to receive and they can't hold it. You loved deeply. You gave your whole heart. You poured yourself into someone who didn't have the capacity to pour back. And now you feel not only empty, but estranged from the very source of love itself, and it hurts, because that kind of distance isn't just spiritual, it's emotional erosion. You wake up and wonder who you've become. You start to feel like your love was a mistake, that your tenderness was weakness, that your depth was too much. But hear this, your love wasn't too much. It was misplaced. You were created to love people with God's love. But before you ever loved them, you were meant to be loved by Him. You see, the soul is designed with divine architecture. Its foundation is communion with God, not codependency with people. And when we bypass God, when we skip intimacy with Him to chase intimacy with others, we set ourselves up for heartbreak that feels spiritual because it is. Psychologically, this disconnect shows up as emotional burnout, anxious attachment, or a desperate need to be seen. But beneath it all is a much deeper truth. You've been offering people a throne they were never meant to sit on. You've made them the source of your identity, and in doing so, you lost your reflection in God's gaze. Love, real love, requires structure, not walls but order. It flows best when it's first received vertically from heaven to heart and then poured out horizontally toward others. Without that divine sequence, love mutates, it becomes obsession, it becomes sacrifice without wisdom, it becomes martyrdom for people who didn't ask to be gods. Philosophically, love as an organizing principle doesn't just mean emotional connection. It means moral alignment. It means seeing the other not as an idol or savior, but as a fellow image, bearer, equally flawed, equally longing, equally incapable of saving you. This is the beginning of healing, to understand that the love you gave wasn't wasted, but it needs to be reoriented. Given to God first, so that when you love people again, it's not with the desperation of someone begging to be filled, but with the quiet strength of someone already full. This is what makes love powerful, not its emotion, not its fire, but its discipline, the daily choice to give from overflow, not emptiness. The commitment to love from truth, not fantasy. The willingness to be vulnerable, but only under the covering of God's wisdom. So how do we navigate the tension between unconditional love and human imperfection? We begin by loving others through the lens of grace, not fantasy, by seeing their flaws not as disqualifiers, but as shared burdens, because we too are broken, we too have failed, and it is in the mutual recognition of our weakness that true connection begins. To love someone not despite their flaws, but because they remind you of your own humanity, that's not foolish. That's holy, but first we must return to the altar, return to the quiet place, return to the one who never mishandled your heart. Because he is the only one who can hold all of you and teach you how to hold others without losing yourself. There's a moment, quiet and haunting, when you wake up and realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. Not because you've done something awful, but because somewhere along the way you stopped being anchored. You stopped being known, you drifted slowly, silently, and in the process something sacred was lost. And the most painful part, you didn't even notice it happening. That's what distance from God feels like. It's not always loud, sometimes it's subtle erosion, 1,000 little compromises, skipped prayers, emotional exhaustion, prioritizing survival over surrender, replacing presence with performance, and suddenly you're a stranger in your own soul. But let's peel back the layers, because this isn't just about disobedience or distraction, it's about disconnection from love. And not just any love, but the kind that holds you when everything else breaks. You see, love, real love, is not an accessory to your life. It's the organizing force of your identity. And when we're cut off from that divine source, we begin looking for ourselves in things that were never designed to define us. Relationships, success, validation, attention. But what happens when those things fail? We don't just lose love, we lose ourselves. Psychologically, this disconnection shows up in confusion, emotional numbness, restlessness. You might still be functioning, but you're not living. You're reacting. You're chasing. You're trying to feel alive, but all you feel is tired. And here's where philosophy meets spirit. We were never meant to define ourselves by what we do or how people love us. We were meant to be defined by who God is in us. That's why His presence is not optional. It's essential. Because when you forget who He is, you forget who you are. And love, true love, was always meant to be a mirror. It reflects, it reveals, it refines. It's not just something you feel. It's something you become. And becoming requires vulnerability, commitment, and yes, sacrifice. We live in a culture obsessed with pleasure, a love that's easy, a love that doesn't demand anything. But anything that doesn't require responsibility is not love. It's self-gratification. And that's the danger, when love becomes a tool to serve our desires rather than a space to die to ourselves. We miss the very thing love was designed to do: transform us. Love is not here to make you comfortable. It's here to make you holy, and holiness isn't perfection, it's alignment. It's surrender. It's knowing that love is a choice made daily, even in the chaos. It's holding someone's brokenness without trying to fix them. It's letting the friction of imperfection draw you deeper into grace, not push you away. So how do we navigate that tension? By returning again and again to presence, because you cannot love well when you are disconnected from the source of love. You cannot be whole in a relationship if your soul is fragmented. You cannot offer truth if your heart is running on emotional survival. And here's the powerful truth: to love someone not in spite of their flaws, but because of the shared burden of being, is to say, I see your mess and I choose you anyway, because God saw mine and did the same. That kind of love can only be born in the presence of God. So if you feel far from Him, if you feel like you've lost yourself in the noise, you're not broken beyond repair. You're just being invited back to stillness, back to identity, back to the kind of love that doesn't just rescue you, it restores you. There's a misconception many of us carry, one that quietly poisons the purity of love, the belief that love should always feel good, that if it's hard, it must be wrong, that if it hurts, it must be broken, that if it's messy, it must not be real. But that's not love, that's comfort, that's pleasure, that's fantasy dressed in romance. Love, real, spiritual, soul-defining love, is not always soft. Sometimes it's fire, not the kind that burns you out, but the kind that burns away what doesn't belong. And here is the uncomfortable truth: love reveals your heart by confronting it. Psychologically, we long for connection. We're wired for it, but meaningful relationships always demand a cost, one many are unwilling to pay: vulnerability. It takes courage to open the deepest parts of yourself and allow someone to see your fear, your shame, your past. And stay, and even more, it takes courage to see the same in another and still choose to love them, not despite it, but within it. You see, love is not the absence of pain. It is the decision to keep showing up in spite of it. Philosophically, love functions as a moral force. It is the binding agent of virtue. It calls us to be more, not just feel more. And if it's true that we are shaped by what we are devoted to, then love, in its highest form, is a path of moral transformation. It doesn't just ask for your heart, it asks for your character. But in a world addicted to convenience, that's a hard sell. Because discipline feels like death to the ego, and love that requires commitment feels like a trap to a heart that's been wounded. And so we run, we numb, we reduce love to a pursuit of pleasure, we chase intensity instead of depth, validation instead of virtue, excitement instead of endurance. But here's the danger in that: when love becomes a thrill instead of a truth, it will collapse under the weight of reality. Because real love, divine love, is not about how high it makes you feel. It's about how deeply it roots you. Jesus didn't love us because we were perfect. He loved us because He saw us fully and still chose the cross. And that is the standard, not romantic idealism, but sacrificial intimacy. To love someone is to say, I see your shadow and I will not run. It's choosing to carry the tension between grace and growth. It's standing in the middle of someone's storm and declaring, you are still worth it. This kind of love only grows in the presence of God, because without Him our capacity is limited. But with Him, love becomes a reflection of heaven, one that stretches us, sanctifies us, and brings us closer to the image we were created in. So, how do we navigate the tension? By shifting our focus. Instead of asking, does this make me happy? We begin to ask, is this making me holy? And when the fire of imperfection flares up, we don't run, we let it refine, because in that refining, love becomes something eternal. To love not in spite of flaws, but because of the shared burden of being. This is divine love. It is the echo of Eden and the shadow of Calvary. It is the most human thing we'll ever do and the most sacred. And it is here, in the honest chaos of relationship, that we find our truest reflection, not in how others love us, but in how we choose to love them through their weakness. That's not weakness, that's worship. There's a sacred truth that often gets buried beneath our emotional chaos. Love is not about escape, it's about endurance. And if you've ever truly loved someone, not in fleeting moments of passion, but in the trenches of disappointment, misunderstanding, and waiting, then you know love is war. Not against each other, but against everything in us that resists becoming whole. You see, love in its most authentic expression is not a feeling we stumble into. It's not butterflies, poetic texts, or late night phone calls. Those are expressions of love, not the essence of it. Love is a voluntary act of the will. It is courage in motion, responsibility clothed in grace. It is the conscious decision to show up even when every voice in your head screams, run. Philosophically, love is the foundation upon which our highest human ideals are built. Why? Because it requires everything. Vulnerability, surrender, patience, forgiveness. The very virtues we avoid are the ones love demands. Psychologically, love shapes identity. It mirrors your brokenness, not to shame you, but to heal you. In love, you see yourself reflected through another, and that mirror doesn't lie. Love, real love, will show you your pride, your impatience, your fear, and if you let it, it will transform you. But this transformation can only happen when we stop reducing love to pleasure. That's the great danger of our time. We've equated love with consumption. We seek what satisfies in the moment, not what sanctifies over time. We've made love about feeling good rather than becoming good. And in doing so, we abandon the process. Because here's the truth, love will cost you, it will cost your pride, it will cost your entitlement. It will cost your comfort. It will stretch your soul and expose the idols you didn't know you carried. And yet, in that stretching, there is something divine, a holiness that cannot be faked or fabricated. When you love someone not despite their flaws, but because of the shared burden of being, something sacred ignites. It's not about fixing the other, it's about carrying the cross together. It's about seeing brokenness not as a barrier to love, but as the battleground where love is most proven. Unconditional love, then, isn't blind. It sees clearly and chooses anyway. But how do we live this? How do we remain anchored in love amid betrayal, disappointment, or disconnection? We remember the eternal lens, because love grounded in eternity isn't reactive, it's rooted. It's not fragile like emotions, it's faithful like covenant. God's love for us isn't based on our performance. He doesn't withhold affection when we fall short. His love is the kind that endures the cross, and if we are to reflect Him, even in human relationship, then our love must be shaped by that same Spirit. It means that love becomes more than a relationship status or romantic gesture. It becomes a spiritual discipline, a form of worship, a way of living out the gospel with flesh and bone. When we choose to love fully, sacrificially, imperfectly, we become participants in divine mystery. We touch something eternal, and in doing so, we begin to reflect the image we were created in. So, the next time you find yourself wondering if love is worth the effort, remember, love is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of purpose, forged in fire, grounded in truth, and crowned with eternity.